Many Magical Tales presents the exclusive debut of Fiddlefern, The Raven, the Gnome and the Mimic, Book 2 of the Last Gnome of Farenthia series, written by Christopher Duerr. Stay tuned and join us as we return to Farenthia.
Welcome to Many Magical Tales, short stories for kids by Christopher Duerr. Thank you for joining us on another adventure.
Fiddlefern, The Raven, the Gnome and the Mimic, Book 2, written by Christopher Duerr.
In the Lumendell woods, there lived an oracle who could see far and wide. The servants of the dark could never find her no matter how hard they tried. The oracle and those of her kind go back before memory and time. But as we all know, you cannot have dark without light, or day without night. And locked in another realm, where he had been trapped for years, was Atreges the Abysmal, who lingered in memories and fears. He had been unleashed on Farenthia long ago, so long that most don't remember. But from the fire that he caused, there are still a few remaining embers.
Chapter 1. The Wizard and the Witch.
The wizard and the witch were dueling in the sky. As the thunderbird the witch was flying let out an awful cry. The dragon and the wizard had gotten the upper hand. Then the witch began to drop to find somewhere to land. The battle was raging on right where it left off long ago. The sky was crackling with lightning as the thunder rumbled low. The dragon flew down to chase the giant bird. By the time it landed, something had occurred. The witch and the bird both had disappeared, and the thunderstorm had stopped, and sky had gotten clear. The wizard said to himself, "I need help this time. I cannot keep letting her escape. She will disrupt the balance and doom all of our fates." He jumped on the back of the dragon. "Fly to Lumendell. I must speak with the oracle. I have a feeling this time the witch is up to something horrible."
Chapter 2. The Storm. The Raven and the Gnome were sitting around the fire. "Well, I'm calling it a night." The Gnome was getting tired. The Raven said,
"Good night, I'll see you in the morning."
Outside, a storm raged in the distance, and the rain had started pouring. The Raven was feeling uneasy, but couldn't put it into words.
I need to relax. I'm sure that it's nothing. I'm being completely absurd. I'm sure it's just a normal storm, no reason to be concerned. Or maybe I'm wrong about that, and maybe the witch has returned.
Deep in the Bramblewick woods, the witch stood next to a fire, reciting incantations and throwing more wood on the fire. A cauldron was bubbling and hissing and letting off incredible steam, when suddenly from inside the pot there came an unusual scream.
Your skin will adapt, your body will change, your form will be ever shifting.
On the ground stood a small little creature who stared at the witch, just listening. The witch said,
"What that interfering gnome has done cannot be forgiven. You must bring him to me. Do not let me down. Do your job, my mimic."
Chapter 3. The Woods. The next morning at breakfast, the Raven said,
Do you ever worry about the witch? I mean, we really know nothing about her, yet alone where she is.
The Gnome said, "I've given it some thought, and concluded it's not my job to worry. Let the wizard sort that out, either him or the fairy."
What fairy?
Said the Raven.
Oh, you mean the pixie we met?
The Gnome said, "Fairy, pixie, what's the difference? You know perfectly well what I meant."
That's like saying there's no difference between a gnome and a dwarf. I mean, one is short with a beard, and one has a beard and is short.
The Raven continued,
You're ridiculous. I'm starting to think meeting other creatures would do you good.
The Gnome said, "No thanks, Crow. I'm perfectly happy in my neck of the woods." Last time I did that, I almost got attacked by a goblin, murdered by a witch, and eaten by a troll. Let's make a deal. If you stop talking, we'll go and take a forest stroll. They walked out the door into the woods and down over the creek. The raven asked,
Did you hear that storm last night, or were you too deeply asleep?
No, and what about it? Also, do you ever stop asking questions? The raven ignored the jab and said,
I just got an eerie feeling, like a presence.
So that's why you asked me about the witch first thing in the morning. The bird said,
Well, I saw lightning in the sky long before it started pouring.
Fiddlefern said, Oh, so they don't have thunderstorms in Farwood Forest South?
They do, but something was different. I just don't know what it was about.
Just then the raven got tense and said,
Why is it so quiet?
The gnome laughed. Quiet. Since we left the house, you have yet to be silent.
No, I'm serious. Everything has stopped. No birds, no bugs, no sounds.
The gnome realized he was right. He was paying attention now. Just then they heard some footsteps of something in the leaves, and they turned to see something coming from around an oak tree. It was small, covered in fur, with a mouth sort of like a beak. It had a curious expression and didn't seem to know how to speak. It just purred and chirped and looked at the raven and the gnome. The gnome said, Okay, not sure what that is, but I think we should probably go. The creature let out a whimper and could definitely understand what was said.
Maybe we should help it,
said the raven. Fiddlefern said, Are you out of your head? This thing doesn't need help, it needs to go on its own way.
Hello, little fellow, where are you from? Is everything okay?
The raven was concerned and was wondering from where it came. The gnome said, Okay, goodbye, have a good day, we've got to be on our way. They both began walking back towards the house. Just then, the creature turned around and made a strange sound. Fiddlefern said, That was incredibly strange, and for here, that's saying a lot.
That thing was harmless,
said the bird. The gnome said, Something tells me that it's not. They thought they heard it following, but when they looked back, it had gone, and eventually the birds and the bugs started resuming their songs. They arrived back home, and Fiddlefern checked all the locks, and the bird just rolled his eyes and said,
You really need to stop. You think that little itty-bitty, fuzzy little creature is actually a threat. I think not. You know you're about as paranoid as it gets.
Chapter 4. The Mimic. They heard or saw nothing of the creature the rest of the night, and come morning light, the gnome woke up to a sight. The living room was a wreck, and the window was wide open, and there was a cup on the floor completely shattered and broken. Raven, where are you? What in the world happened? On the back of the couch was the bird. He was mumbling and laughing. Raven, are you all right? What went on in here? The raven was mumbling words that Fiddlefern just couldn't hear.
Everything is fine, so I just had a minor little accident. But everything is fine. You need to follow me. We have to hurry up. We're running out of time.
Then the raven hopped out of the window and told the gnome to hurry. The gnome was perplexed and started getting worried. Would you slow down? I can't keep up. Where are we going? Off the raven went running and flying low with no signs of slowing. The gnome was running and following, but having a hard time, and he started to think the raven was losing his mind. The path began to become narrow, and the briar was getting thick, and Fiddlefern began to get caught on all the thorns and sticks. All along, the gnome felt this was very wrong. I don't know what's gotten into this bird. I think his last marble's gone. The bird stopped and let the gnome catch his breath. It said,
We have to keep moving. There's no time for us to rest.
If you don't tell me what's going on, I'm turning back. Fiddlefern had enough. It was getting foggy and he couldn't see the path. The fog was thick as stew and the daylight was hidden by the woods. Fiddlefern kept saying to himself, This can't be any good. The bird was getting far ahead and was completely ignoring the gnome. They had been running for a while and were very far from home. Fiddlefern noticed the path was disappearing and turning into a bog. Suddenly he got stuck in sinking mud after hopping over a log. He tried pulling himself out, but after almost getting out, he fell. He started panicking and asking the raven to come back and help. He just sat there and stared at him, and showed no signs of helping. He ignored the gnome looking at him and angrily yelling. Will you help me? The wind picked up, and the gnome felt tension in the pit of his stomach. The sky grew dark, and he knew something wicked was coming. Just then, the raven flew off and disappeared into the mist. Then he heard a dreadful voice say,
You did it, my mimic. You've brought me my gift.
The gnome was stunned as he was confronted by the witch.
Hello, Gnome. I bet you thought you would never see me again.
Chapter 5. Farwood Forest. Many miles south, the Raven woke up in a daze, lying on the dirt. He had no idea what happened to him, but his left wing was severely hurt. He was beginning to roll over. He was feeling very weak. He heard a muffled voice from the bush as someone began to speak.
Are you okay? What happened? Do you need any help?
As he noticed a fox looking at him, he began to yell. The Raven shouted,
"Oh no, please don't eat me. I doubt I'd be very good."
The Raven noticed there was no one else around in the woods.
I just want to help. Are you hurt?
The Raven looked highly stressed. The fox was concerned about the bird. It looked an awful mess. He said,
"I need to get back. Something's wrong, and I need to get back home. Something has happened to him, I know it. We need to check on the gnome. I need to see if anything awful has happened to my friend."
The Raven told the fox.
Wherever you're going, you can't fly, so we're going to have to walk.
"What's your name, and do you know exactly where we are now?"
My name is Finley, and we are in the most northern part of Farwood Forest South.
The Raven said,
"Curious. How on earth did I end up all the way down here?"
What had happened to the bird wasn't exactly clear. Finley said,
Let's start heading this way and get back on the path. You need some rest for now. Why don't you climb up on my back?
They walked for miles and miles, then finally reached the Willow Bend River. It was getting cold and rainy, and both animals began to shiver. The Raven said,
"Let's stay here tonight. Then we'll try to find a way across in the morning."
They found shelter in an alcove near the bank as the rain began pouring. During the night they heard many sounds, some incredibly strange, and the river was beginning to rise as it continued to rain.
I hope the rain stops and the water doesn't continue to rise.
They huddled close in the alcove as the lightning crackled in the sky. The morning came and they found no bridge, so they had to try to swim across. On the other shore, the Whitakers was hiding and waiting to cut them off. The Whitakers had glowing red eyes and snuck on all fours and had 2 long horns on his head. And usually, when you saw him, you were only minutes from dead. But the Raven saw the creature creeping in the water, approaching quick.
"Hurry, there's something in the water, hiding in the reeds and sticks."
They switched direction, and the fox swam as hard as he could. He heard the creature gaining on them as he almost reached the woods. Chapter 6. The Lumindell Woods. The wizard and the dragon sat down in the Lumindell Woods. At once they saw the oracle kneeling on the ground, cloaked in a hood. It said,
"Hello, Arador. I see you made it off the mountain."
the oracle said. The wizard replied,
"Yes and no thanks to you. You would have left me for dead."
She said,
"Who do you think sent the lightning rider to save the gnome when you just sent him letters? You know I cannot leave these woods, not now, not ever. Until very recently I could not see you and I believed you to be lost. The last war that was waged I paid an incredible cost. My powers are diminishing and there are parts of Farenthia I cannot see."
The wizard looked shocked.
"I don't understand. How can that be?"
The wizard said,
"The witch is up to something. Well, something more than normal. I'm convinced that somehow she's found a way to open up the portal."
She said,
"Do you not think I would have known by now if it really was open? Although I can't see her, and when I try my mind loses focus."
We have to do something. She needs to be stopped, and I thought for sure that you'd be on the watch.
The oracle's eyes rolled back into her head and she stood still as stone. Then she finally spoke.
"Something is wrong. You must find that gnome."
Arador said,
Are you sure? He was safe when I left him and the raven at his home.
"He has gone into darkness, and from there I do not know.
What about the bird? Can you find the bird?
The wizard had gotten worried.
He is in the river with a fox and they're swimming in a hurry."
He told the oracle.
Keep an eye on the situation. When I can, I'll send a message.
Then he hopped on the dragon's back and they were gone within seconds. The wizard was debating on which direction to head now. Then he told the dragon to just begin to head south. Chapter 7. The Cage. Fiddlefern woke up groggy. He was in a complete daze. The first thing he noticed is he was sitting in a cage, and sitting on the ground just silently watching was the mimic. "I should have known that you had something to do with this." It was the creature from the woods when he and the raven were walking. He kept asking the mimic, "Where is the raven?" But the creature wasn't talking. "If you did anything to my friend, it will be the last thing you ever do." Fiddlefern was distraught. This situation was too strange to be true.
Now, Don't be mean to my mimic, he's just doing what he's told.
The witch had entered the room, and the room was getting cold. Fiddlefern said, "What is wrong with you? Why won't you leave me alone?"
Oh, my dear Fiddlefern, you are alone, more alone than you know. You just had to take that egg, even though it wasn't yours to take. I'm sorry, but now is the time to lay in the bed you made.
The witch seemed to be enjoying playing with her prey. The gnome just glared, debating what he should say.
Have you ever wondered why you are the last gnome left? Surely you must have wondered where they all went.
The gnome just stared. "What do you mean? Exactly what do you know?"
Oh, I know many things about many things that happened long ago. A long time ago, in the foothills of Favian Mountain East, there was a peaceful village of gnomes who lived their lives in peace. But one day, a group of gnomes discovered a door on top of the Favian Mountain's peak. They opened the door to another realm and let in an unspeakable beast. The gnomes were responsible for casting Farenthia into darkness.
Yeah, okay, sure, that's interesting and all, but regardless, you are the one holding me locked up in a cage. Speaking of that, what are you doing with me anyway?
Oh, you'll see. But first we're going to have some fun, and I think you'll see things my way when this is all done.
Yeah, okay, sounds great, can't wait. Fiddlefern was starting to think about ways to escape. Chapter 8. The Light. Finley was swimming hard as he could, and was almost to the shore, when he heard a noise unlike anything he had heard before.
You're almost there. Keep going.
The raven shouted in fear. The monster was almost on top of them when a white light appeared. The monster feared bright lights and was instantly driven back. The fox made it out of the water and ran from the water's edge fast. They looked for who rescued them, and the raven saw the pixie.
"Oh, good, I finally found you. You need to hurry and come with me."
The pixie said,
"Something is happening that hasn't happened for many years. All across Farenthia is a growing sense of fear, and creatures like that one are appearing across the lands, waiting to snatch up any travellers that they can."
The raven said,
Do you know what's happened to myself and the gnome? I somehow woke up with a broken wing many miles from my home.
She said,
"I was sent a message from the Oracle of the Lumendale Woods to hurry up to Farwood Forest and try to find you if I could."
We have to hurry. We're not far from my home.
Off the trio went. It was time to check on the gnome. After a few more miles of running through the woods, they made it to the treehouse, but it didn't look good. They approached slowly and saw the door was wide open, and the front window of the home was completely broken.
Oh my goodness, what on earth happened?
The raven exclaimed. He proceeded with caution, and the pixie and fox did the same. Just then the gnome came walking out, grinning from ear to ear. "Hello, my good friends, I have been waiting for you here." The raven said,
Thank goodness you're okay. Do you have any idea what happened?
The gnome said, "Come in, everyone," and began quietly laughing. Just then Finley's hair stood on end and he began growling low. Then the pixie said,
"Raven, come back here. Do not go into the home."
Fiddlefern scowled at her and said, "Mind your own business, pixie." The raven said,
Wait a minute, you didn't say fairy.
Then he knew instantly. He ran back away from the gnome as fast as he could. Just then, the gnome let out a wild sound that echoed through the woods. Then they heard a thundering, booming sound somewhere in the trees. And all of a sudden they heard a massive bird scream. Then a giant thunderbird came through the trees with the witch perched on its back.
"Come to me, my mimic."
And she let out an hideous laugh. The gnome transformed into the mimic, then climbed on the thunderbird's back. The witch said,
"Looks like I caught 3 more tasty little flies in my trap."
The pixie then stood in front of Finley and the raven and said,
"When I say run, you run.
Just then she pulled out a small wand and cast a light as bright as the sun.
Run!"
She yelled as the witch covered her eyes from the blinding light. Then they all sprinted into the woods and disappeared from sight. Chapter 9. The Escape. Fiddlefern was kicking and kicking the door of his little cage. He was starting to lose hope. He had been stuck there many days. He thought, the witch and the mimic have been gone for a while. Wherever she is, I'm sure she's up to something vile. I have to get out of this place before she gets back. Just then he remembered a little metal pin that he kept tucked in his hat. He pulled it out and started fiddling with the lock. After a while of trying and trying, he finally heard a pop. He was free. He ran to the door, but it was locked from the outside. He was trying to knock it open, but it didn't budge, no matter how hard he tried. He started yelling for help and shouting for anyone to hear. Then he heard some kind of monstrous sound coming near. "She's back!" He could hear what sounded like the witch's thunderbird, so he kept quiet, hiding in the darkness, not saying a word. Maybe I should pretend to be locked in the cage. Then he decided he was going to attack her. He was filling up with rage. He heard the door open and got ready to charge hard, but then he heard a voice that caught him off his guard.
Fiddlefern, are you in here?
A different voice said the wizard had come to get him.
I've found you, my little friend.
Chapter 10. The Thunderbird. The pixie, fox and raven were hiding in a hole in a giant fallen tree. Finley said,
"If we stay put, maybe they will go by and they won't see. I still can't believe that all this exists this close to my little woods. When I get back to Farwood South, I'm staying there for good."
The pixie said,
I'm sorry to tell you this, but your woods might never be the same. Something is very different now, and everything has changed.
The fox was thinking of his friends, the otter and the toad.
"I'm going to check on both of them if I ever get back home."
Just then they heard the thunderbird's terrible screech. They heard it stomping and stamping as it thundered through the trees. It was heading their way, and they weren't sure if they should run. The pixie gripped her little wand and was debating what needed to be done. The witch was screaming and yelling. She was incredibly mad.
"When I tell the gnome about your deaths, he will be oh so sad."
The raven yelled back,
What have you done to my friend?
"Well, after I finish you three, your bearded friend will meet his end."
Then many things happened all at the same time. They saw the wings of a gigantic green dragon coming from the sky. Then the pixie charged forward with her little wand alight, and the thunderbird had temporarily lost its sight. It moved backwards and caused the witch and mimic to fall down. Then the green dragon touched down on the ground.
We're saved.
The raven told the fox as he was running from the tree. Then the mimic started changing. He was growing big and green. Suddenly 2 dragons stood facing off against each other. Fiddlefern jumped off Mossfire's back and quickly ran for cover. He saw the raven and grabbed him. Then he jumped behind a tree. Then what unfolded next was an awesome sight to see. The dragons began fighting and the witch began running. The thunderbird was about to join the fight until it saw the witch coming. The wizard grabbed his staff and started casting powerful spells.
You will not escape me!
Fiddlefern heard the wizard yell. The dragons were gnashing and snarling, clawing and biting. It was an incredible sight to behold, but also terribly frightening. It appeared as though the mimic dragon could not produce flames, and when Mossfire's flames hit it, it began to change. It was shifting and morphing and changing into many different shapes. While all eyes were on the mimic, the witch had made her escape. The thunderbird took off into the clouds and disappeared into the mist. The dragon let out an incredible roar, then looked at the sky and hissed. The gnome said, "Well, I'll give her one thing. She's very good at getting away, but eventually her luck will run out, and she won't be so lucky one day." Then he said to the pixie and the fox, "Thank you both for saving my friend."
Yes, without them I'd have been a goner days ago,
the bird said. The pixie said to Arador,
"What do you think we should do next?"
The wizard was staring into the sky with an expression of being perplexed. Before he could speak, they heard a sound and all turned to see the mimic. Now that the witch had abandoned the mimic was acting more timid. The wizard said,
Once you abandon a mimic, it never lets go of a grudge. I'd wager to say the witch has no more control over what it does.
Just then, the mimic morphed into an owl, then flew away up into the trees. The wizard said,
I doubt that he's left. He's probably waiting around until we leave.
He told the pixie,
I think for now, you should go with the fox to Farwood Forest South, meet with the council, and do everything you can to keep the wicked creatures out. Recruit any animals you can to help keep protection on the woods. We are the last line of defense to keep Farenthia good. I believe the witch is trying to free Atreigus the Abysmal, and I think she thinks for some reason Fiddlefern is pivotal.
Why on earth would she think that? The gnome blurted out. Arador said,
I don't know, but we're going now to find out.
Chapter 11. The Council. The Golden Eagle was speaking.
I have spoken with the wizard who sent me here to warn about the looming darkness that is quickly coming near.
I suppose you have a solution, or why else have this meeting?
the wolf said darkly. His patience was fleeting.
Also, you claim the witch is behind this, but you come here with no proof. How are we even sure that Wizard is telling you the truth?
Victor the wolf was ready to end the discussion. Corvidicus spoke and said,
The eagle is correct, for I have seen the darkness coming.
The wolf said,
I have also heard that the wizard now has a new dragon. You would think that he could handle all of this. It's funny that he hasn't. I think he is stirring up trouble and disrupting our lives for his means. Someone is up to something, but who? That has yet to be seen.
Odin the owl said,
I will travel north to speak with the Oracle of Lumindel. For now we should send out spies before our next meeting, for only time will tell.
They went their separate ways, the owl and the eagle continued speaking.
Arador is still unsure on exactly what the witch is seeking. Ever since the gnome and raven helped the wizard get the dragon, she has been causing more chaos than I could have ever imagined.
Off the two birds took flight, flying into the dark night, and from the sky they could see Farenthia glowing under the moon's light. Chapter 12. The Oracle. The gnome shouted, I told you that mimic creature thing was up to no good, and I mean it. When this is over, I'm never leaving my woods. The raven said,
Aren't you at least going to admit you've been bored without me around?
No way! I was enjoying the peace and quiet. The gnome and raven were laughing now.
Bet you wish you never opened that letter and went and got the egg.
The bird said, yes and no. To be honest, I was incredibly bored before with no friends, even though I somehow ended up friends with the most talkative bird I've ever met.
What about us?
Asked Arador. Fiddlefern said, maybe yes, but you did get me into this mess.
I will also be the one to get you out of trouble too.
The gnome chuckled and said, well, we'll see about that. I hope that you do. The dragon started dropping down and getting closer to the trees. Soon as the dragon let them down, he felt an immediate sense of ease. Though it was dark night, the Lumindel woods let off a constant glow. There were lanterns and fireflies and fluorescent things he didn't know. I have a vague feeling that I've been here before, Fiddlefern said. There were lost memories of his early life swimming in his head.
Welcome back to Lumindel, Fiddlefern. It has been a very long time.
The oracle was standing and smiling to her new guests that had arrived. As soon as they all greeted each other, arrived the eagle and Odin. Arador told the eagle,
It's good to see you, my friend. How are things going?
The eagle said,
Not good. I have spoken with the council, and they plan to just keep watch.
Then Odin said,
Yes, for now, but I've come to discuss with you all that you know about the witch's plot. Corvidicus has seen the creatures creeping further south. He and Benedict the bear have begun sending spies to look out.
Arador said,
I have sent the pixie and Finley the fox back to help.
The oracle said,
Yes, there are many moving parts and many tales to tell. To begin with, I think Fiddlefern must be told everything we know. For I realise now why the witch is chasing him and where she wants to go. A long time ago, in the furthest northern reaches of Farenthia, your ancestors lived in the foothills of the Favian Mountains for more than a millennia. Among the gnomes was a king, who was a descendant of the kings of old. His power lay in his staff, more specifically the staff's stone. One fateful day, a tree appeared on top of the Favian Mountains peak, and all the village elders travelled up to go and see. The tree had grown from nowhere, and it was never there before, and at the base of the tree was a strange, solid black door. The king and the elders all determined it was best to leave this tree alone. When something curious happened, the king's staff stone began to glow, and without thinking, the king tapped the stone to the black door, and something occurred that the gnomes had never seen before. The door opened, and on the other side was a terrifying sight. Even though it was day on their side, through the door was dark night. At once they could see and hear a snarling beast. It filled them all with fright. There was a sorceress on its massive back with eyes of red light. It was a Tragus, the abysmal and unspeakable creature of dark, who came through the portal and tore Farenthia apart. The gnomes sought help to destroy Tragus and the witch. Nothing they tried helped, no matter whatever they did. The gnomes were almost all destroyed in the defense of their land. Only a few remained while making their last stand. After many attempts to defeat it, the monster seemed immortal. Finally, the wizards came and drove the monster through the portal. Your parents were some of the last few gnomes to survive the attack. They moved into the woods far from the mountain and never came back. The witch remained on this side of the portal, plotting and biding her time, looking for ways to cause chaos and reach the other side. I believe she thinks as the last gnome of Farenthia only you can open the door, and she was unaware of you before you brought the egg to Arador. I understand this is shocking, but I must tell you one more thing. Your grandfather is the one who opened the door, and you are a direct descendant of kings.
Fiddlefern was speechless and was unsure how to respond. It was hard hearing he was the last gnome of Farenthia, and the rest were gone. I still don't understand. I have no staff, no stone, and I have never seen such a tree. I have no knowledge of any of this. This is all news to me. That witch is wasting her time. I wish she'd let me be. It's bad enough I am the only gnome left, but I also can't just live in peace. Arador, did you know any of this? Why did no one tell me? This is absolutely crazy.
To be honest, before my isolation and downfall, everything is a bit hazy.
The raven said,
Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost.
It's a lot to take in, but some things make sense now. It's like I've always known. The gnome said, Then why is she only after me now after all this time?
I believe until you went and took the egg, she didn't know you were alive. We may never know her true intentions, for she is not of this realm.
Fiddlefern was silent. He was obviously overwhelmed. I need some time to myself to think over what you've said. I'm going to take a short walk. I need to clear my head. Chapter 13. Betrayal. Fiddlefern began walking and talking to himself. Is all of this the truth? It was very hard to tell. He thought he heard a noise from the sky up above. He felt a present danger and wasn't sure of what it was. In an instant, the witch's thunderbird shot down through the clouds. It came directly towards the gnome and snatched him off the ground. Before the gnome could fight back, they were racing through the sky, flying towards the mountains, climbing very high. The witch was laughing.
You thought you'd get away? There is no turning back.
The moon was behind the clouds and the sky was pitch black. They landed on the mountain top and stood at the old and withered tree. The witch was going to have her revenge, for all Farenthia to see. She grabbed the gnome, prepared to force him to try to get the door open, when something utterly unexpected happened that left the sorceress frozen. Fiddlefern grinned then in an instant. He started transforming. Before her and the bird stood a massive dragon roaring. The mimic attacked the bird, it panicked, then it flew away with speed. The mimic grabbed the witch, then flew off towards the Farenthia Sea. Chapter 14. Atragus the Abysmal. They heard the noise and the oracle shouted,
She's taken the gnome.
Where do you think she's headed? Do you know which way to go?
Arador climbed on the dragon and was about to chase the bird when the gnome came back in panic from what he heard. Arador said,
Thank goodness you're okay. Did you hear the thunderbird screech?
Yes, and I saw them lift up into the sky, and it was carrying me. They all stood and pondered what exactly was happening, but the raven realized at once. Then he started laughing.
The witch took the mimic off instead. I guess he really holds a grudge. He must have followed us the whole time to know where Fiddlefern was.
The oracle said,
Be silent. There is a dragon carrying the witch away across Farenthia Sea.
Well, that's a problem that solved itself. At least, for the time being.
Arador looked at the oracle, standing stone still, and said,
What are you seeing?
Just then they heard a loud rumble in the distance.
What's happening? What's going on? What is it?
Farwood Forest is covered in darkness and I cannot see what's happened. I am trying to see, but I can't. The entire forest is blackened.
Odin and the eagle sprung into action.
We will fly ahead and see what we can.
Arador said,
Wait until you see me arriving. Whatever you do not try to land.
And with that, the golden eagle and the owl took off through the trees. Arador said,
Do you think Atragus has returned? What else could it be?
Possibly, but I cannot say for sure. This does not feel the same as before. Fiddlefern, before you go into danger, I present you with this sword. This sword was used in the last war in the fight against the Doom.
The oracle pulled out a shining silver blade that glinted in the moon. Fiddlefern said, Thank you. It seems like I might soon have to put it to good use.
I know you will, and when the time comes, it will tell you what to do.
Arador said,
Elaria, are you able to summon the 3 riders to assist?
I will try to reach them, but I am not aware of where each of them is.
The ground rumbled again and the wizard shouted for the raven and the gnome. Then the dragon lifted off into the sky and headed towards the gnome's home.
So what do I call you now, Your Highness, Your Majesty, or King?
Listen to me, bird. I will personally cook you if you call me any of those things.
Understood, Your Royal Eminence. I promise I'll bite my tongue.
But the joking halted immediately. What they saw left them stunned. It was taller than the tallest trees, with giant horns on its head, with enormous sharp teeth and eyes that glowed bright red. As they flew through the clouds, they heard a roar that sounded dismal. As they looked down towards Farwood Forest, they saw Atreus the Abysmal. He's massive. What on earth are we going to do against something like that?
We're going to rescue our friends and send that monster back.
The raven let out a war cry, and the gnome lifted his shining sword high. Then the wizard shouted,
"It's time!"
as the dragon flew down from the sky.
"You are not allowed in Farenthia! Begone! Back to the abyss with you!"
The end.